Jack Miller stood before the Galactic Council chamber for the last time. The massive hall, with its high ceiling and ornate decorations from 100 worlds, felt cold. 50 alien representatives sat in rising tiers, looking down at the human with expressions ranging from boredom to contempt. "The people of Earth and all human colonies have made their decision," Jack said, his voice steady despite the weight of his words. "As of today, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council and all associated treaties." A murmur spread through the chamber. Councillor Zex of the Mavorians clicked his mandibles in what passed for laughter among his kind. "Let them leave," he said to his neighbors loud enough for all to hear. "Perhaps we can finally make progress without their constant disruptions." Jack did not react. After 15 years as Earth's ambassador, he was used to such comments. Humans had always been treated as newcomers despite their contributions to medicine, engineering, and defense. "You have been given our official notice," Jack continued. "All human ships and citizens will leave Council space within the standard month. We wish you peace." He turned and walked down the long aisle. Only Councillor Vrex of the Thalians rose from her seat, her gray skin flushing purple with emotion. "Ambassador Miller," she called, "this decision is hasty, perhaps with more discussion." "We've had 100 years of discussion," Jack replied without turning back. "The decision is made." Back on his ship, Jack looked out at the central hub station that had been his home for so long. Susan Carter, his aide, stood beside him, her face reflecting the stars outside. "Did any of them actually care that we're leaving?" she asked. "Only Vrex," Jack said. "The rest think they're better off without us. They'll learn differently soon enough." Across Council space, the great human migration had already begun. Colony ships departed in convoys, carrying millions toward the uncharted Orion Spur. On Earth, people packed belongings and said goodbye to the world that had been humanity's home for all its history. On Mars Colony, Lisa Brooks coordinated departure schedules. Her office walls displayed hundreds of flight paths, each representing thousands of lives. "We need another transport for the Alpha Centauri research team," her assistant said. "Take the Dauntless," Lisa replied. "It can be ready in 3 days." The Council requested that we leave their scientific equipment behind. Lisa looked up from her screens. "We built that equipment. It goes with us." On the edge of Council space, Frank Garcia commanded the military vessel Shield. His ship escorted civilian transports safely through contested regions. The Cracks Collective had increased raids since news of the human withdrawal spread. "Another Cracks scout ship, sir," his sensor officer reported. "Just watching us, like the others." Frank nodded. "They're measuring our strength. Make sure they see our new weapons array. I want them to think twice before testing us." The Shield's presence deterred an attack, allowing 3 colony ships to pass safely. Each carried 10,000 humans seeking a new beginning. In the Council chambers, most representatives had already moved on to other matters when Councillor Vrex approached the High Speaker. "We should reconsider our position on the humans," she said quietly. The High Speaker, an ancient Zitheri with skin like cracked leather, dismissed her concern with a wave of his 6-fingered hand. "They were always trouble," he said. "Their technology is crude, their diplomacy chaotic, and their military tactics reckless. The Council existed for millennia before they arrived, and will continue long after they are forgotten." Vrex's inner eyelids closed briefly in a gesture of disagreement. "They solved the Novan plague when our best minds could not. They negotiated peace with the Trill when war seemed inevitable. Their ships patrol borders that our fleets cannot cover." "Temporary conveniences," the High Speaker replied. "Nothing essential." As the final human transport left the central hub, Council maintenance crews moved in to reclaim former human quarters. They found the spaces surprisingly empty. Humans had taken everything of value, leaving behind only items too large to transport. In his private chambers, Jack Miller watched the hub growing smaller on his view screen. Susan entered with 2 glasses and a bottle of rare whiskey. "To new beginnings," she said, pouring them each a drink. Jack raised his glass. "And to the lesson the Council will learn, though I take no joy in it." "What lesson is that?" Jack looked at the shrinking lights of Council space. "What humanity really gave them, and what it means now that we're gone." 6 months after the last human ship left Council space, Councillor Xalan stood in the Central Hub's main communication center, his scaled face twisted in frustration. "Why is the quantum network still malfunctioning?" he demanded. "This is the third outage this week." The Mavorian technician's antennae drooped. "The system requires maintenance cycles that were designed by human engineers. We are trying to understand their methods, but their documentation is unconventional." Xalan huffed. "Surely the greatest minds in the galaxy can decipher some human scribbles." "Linda Parker trained 6 of our apprentices before she left," the technician said. "But she kept certain processes in her head. She called them workarounds." "Excuses," Xalan said. "Fix it by tomorrow." He stormed out, ignoring the impossibility of his demand. Across the hub, the High Council gathered to discuss territorial redistribution. The High Speaker looked pleased. "Former human colonies are now available for settlement," he announced. "The Zithari claim Proxima Centauri and its resources." Several representatives began arguing over who would get Earth and its moon. None noticed Councillor Vrex sitting quietly, studying reports on her datapad. The figures showed a 26% decrease in interspecies trade since the human departure. "These are merely adjustment periods," the High Speaker said when she raised the issue. "Minor inconveniences while we restructure what the humans disrupted." Far beyond Council space, in the region humans now called New Horizon, Captain Daniel Ross guided his patrol ship along the edge of human territory. His vessel, once considered outdated by Council standards, had been refitted with improvements that would have shocked his former alien colleagues. Another successful test of the shield modifications, his first officer reported. "Energy efficiency up 40%. Daniel nodded. "Send the specs to the rest of the fleet. I want all ships upgraded within the month." "Do you think the Council will come looking for us?" the young officer asked. "Eventually," Daniel said. "Pride comes before a fall, but after the fall comes anger. They'll blame us rather than themselves." On New Terra, the planet chosen as humanity's new capital, William Frost worked late in his laboratory. Since leaving Council space, he had been free to pursue research the Council had deemed too dangerous. His team had made more progress in 6 months than in the previous 5 years. Another successful test, his assistant reported, examining the data from their latest experiment. "The new drive design works." William smiled. "If we were still under Council restrictions, this would have taken another decade." "Should we share this with the Council?" the assistant asked. "It could help them too." William considered this. "They never valued our contributions before. Let them ask for help if they want it." Back in Council space, the first major crisis emerged. A Krax raiding party breached the defense grid around a border station. The Council fleet scrambled to respond, but without human tacticians, their response was slow and predictable. "Where is the emergency response protocol?" the fleet commander demanded. "It was designed by Admiral Paul Davidson," an officer replied. "He took the program when humans left." "Improvise," the commander ordered, but his crew had always followed established procedures. They had never needed to think creatively before. By the time the Council fleet arrived, the station had suffered severe damage and lost valuable resources. The Council blamed faulty equipment rather than acknowledging the real problem. In the Central Hub Medical Center, Dr. Ziv frowned at the virus samples. A new strain was spreading through 3 systems, and traditional Zithari treatments were failing. "We need the human antibody approach," he told his team. Dr. Nancy Hughes developed a method for rapid adaptation. "But we never fully understood her techniques," his assistant said. "She offered to train more of our people, but the Council limited human involvement in medical research." Dr. Ziv's frown deepened. "Then we must develop our own methods. Quickly." On his private ship traveling between human settlements, Jack Miller received reports from their intelligence network. Several small council species had reached out secretly, asking about trading opportunities and potential alliances. They're already feeling the effects, Susan Carter said, reviewing the messages. Jack nodded. Sooner than I expected, but this is just the beginning. The real problems haven't even started yet. Should we help them? Susan asked. Jack looked at the star map showing human expansion. Their new territory was already thriving, developing relationships with species the Council had ignored. They need to understand what they've lost first, he said. Sometimes lessons must be learned the hard way. Outside his viewport, a fleet of human ships worked together to build a new station, one that would welcome all peaceful species, Council-affiliated or not. The future was taking shape, and for the first time in generations, humans were writing their own destiny. 2 years after humanity left Council space, the Mavorian plague struck with devastating force. It began on a small trading post and spread rapidly through the central systems. The disease attacked neural pathways, causing victims to lose control of their bodies before falling into comas. In the Council's emergency medical facility, Dr. Ziv stared hopelessly at the rows of patients. His team had worked non-stop for weeks with no progress. If Dr. Nancy Hughes were here, one of his assistants said, her voice trailing off. Dr. Ziv nodded grimly. She led the response to the Tiberius outbreak. Her containment protocols saved billions. We found her notes in the archives. Another doctor said, but they reference human biological concepts that don't translate well to our understanding. On the Council's main chamber, representatives from 17 affected systems demanded action. The death toll had reached millions, with billions more at risk. The quarantine is failing. The Xanthi delegate cried. My homeworld has lost entire cities. The High Speaker looked older than ever, his confidence replaced by fear. Our best scientists are working on a cure. Your best scientists are failing, the delegate replied. The humans would have solved this by now. Councillor Vrex stepped forward. I propose we reach out to human space, ask for their help. Silence fell across the chamber. Then Councillor Xallen rose from his seat. Never, he said. We will not crawl to them begging. The Council has existed for millennia without human interference. And yet, Vrex countered, when faced with similar crises in the past, it was human doctors who developed solutions. The debate raged for hours while more reports of spreading infection arrived. In the end, pride won over desperation. The Council would face the plague alone. Meanwhile, in human space, Captain Ryan Fletcher guided his scout ship through an uncharted system. His crew had spent the past month mapping resources and making contact with a new species called the Valari. They're eager to meet with our diplomats, Ryan told Jack Miller over a secure channel. The Council rejected them as too primitive decades ago. Jack's image nodded on the screen. The Council's loss is our gain. The Valari control significant resources in their sector. More than the Council realized, Ryan said. Their crystalline technology is unlike anything I've seen before. Different approach, but advanced in its own way. That's the problem with the Council, Jack replied. They measure all advancement by their own standards. Anything different is considered inferior. Ryan's ship detected a distress signal from a nearby moon. Investigating, they found a Council science vessel stranded with engine failure. The crew had been there for months, their distress calls ignored by passing Council ships. Council protocol classifies them as non-essential personnel, the Zithari scientist explained after Ryan offered assistance. Resource allocation procedures prioritize military and political vessels. That's not how we operate, Ryan said, arranging transport for the stranded scientists. When the grateful scientists described the plague ravaging Council space, Ryan immediately sent word to human medical facilities. Within days, human doctors began working on potential treatments, despite the Council's refusal to ask for help. We should offer our research anyway, Dr. Laura Bennett suggested during a medical conference on Nuterra. Innocent people are dying. The council rejected our previous offers, another doctor pointed out. They redirected medical supplies we sent to 3 systems. We'll keep developing the treatment, Laura decided. When they finally ask for help, we'll be ready. In a secret meeting on the central hub, Vrex met with representatives from smaller council species. The plague had exposed weaknesses in the council's structure, with resources flowing primarily to the dominant species. The humans created a more equitable system, a Phaelian delegate said. My colony received more support from human aid programs than from centuries of council membership. We need to reform, Vrex agreed. But first, we must survive this crisis. On Earth's former moon, now abandoned except for automated facilities, a council research team searched for clues to human medical technology. They found empty labs and dormant equipment. They took everything important, the lead researcher reported back to the council. All we have are basic instructions and outdated research. As the plague entered its 3rd month, the death toll climbed to billions. Council worlds implemented increasingly desperate measures. In their new territory, humans monitored the situation with sadness but continued building their future, one that already looked brighter than the past they had left behind. 2 years after humanity left council space, the Mavorian plague struck with devastating force. It began on a small trading post and spread rapidly through the central systems. The disease attacked neural pathways, causing victims to lose control of their bodies before falling into comas. In the council's emergency medical facility, Dr. Ziv stared hopelessly at the rows of patients. His team had worked non-stop for weeks with no progress. If Dr. Nancy Hughes were here, one of his assistants said, her voice trailing off. Dr. Ziv nodded grimly. She led the response to the Tiberius outbreak. Her containment protocols saved billions. We found her notes in the archives, another doctor said, but they reference human biological concepts that don't translate well to our understanding. On the council's main chamber, representatives from 17 affected systems demanded action. The death toll had reached millions, with billions more at risk. The quarantine is failing, the Xanthi delegate cried. My homeworld has lost entire cities. The High Speaker looked older than ever, his confidence replaced by fear. Our best scientists are working on a cure. Your best scientists are failing, the delegate replied. The humans would have solved this by now. Councillor Vrex stepped forward. I propose we reach out to human space. Ask for their help. Silence fell across the chamber. Then Councillor Xalan rose from his seat. Never, he said. We will not crawl to them begging. The council has existed for millennia without human interference. And yet, Vrex countered, when faced with similar crises in the past, it was human doctors who developed solutions. The debate raged for hours while more reports of spreading infection arrived. In the end, pride won over desperation. The council would face the plague alone. Meanwhile, in human space, Captain Ryan Fletcher guided his scout ship through an uncharted system. His crew had spent the past month mapping resources and making contact with a new species called the Valari. They're eager to meet with our diplomats, Ryan told Jack Miller over a secure channel. The council rejected them as too primitive decades ago. Jack's image nodded on the screen. The council's loss is our gain. The Valari control significant resources in their sector. More than the council realize, Ryan said. Their crystalline technology is unlike anything I've seen before. Different approach, but advanced in its own way. That's the problem with the council, Jack replied. They measure all advancement by their own standards. Anything different is considered inferior. Ryan's ship detected a distress signal from a nearby moon. Investigating, they found a council science vessel stranded with engine failure. The crew had been there for months, their distress calls ignored by passing council ships. Council protocol classifies them as non-essential personnel, the Zithari scientist explained after Ryan offered assistance. Resource allocation procedures prioritize military and political vessels. That's not how we operate, Ryan said, arranging transport for the stranded scientists. When the grateful scientists described the plague ravaging Council space, Ryan immediately sent word to human medical facilities. Within days, human doctors began working on potential treatments, despite the Council's refusal to ask for help. "We should offer our research anyway," Dr. Laura Bennett suggested during a medical conference on Nuterra. "Innocent people are dying." "The Council rejected our previous offers," another doctor pointed out. "They redirected medical supplies we sent to 3 systems." "We'll keep developing the treatment," Laura decided. "When they finally ask for help, we'll be ready." In a secret meeting on the Central Hub, Vrex met with representatives from smaller Council species. The plague had exposed weaknesses in the Council's structure, with resources flowing primarily to the dominant species. "The humans created a more equitable system," a Thalian delegate said. "My colony received more support from human aid programs than from centuries of Council membership." "We need to reform," Vrex agreed. "But first, we must survive this crisis." On Earth's former moon, now abandoned except for automated facilities, a Council research team searched for clues to human medical technology. They found empty labs and dormant equipment. "They took everything important," the lead researcher reported back to the Council. "All we have are basic instructions and outdated research." As the plague entered its 3rd month, the death toll climbed to billions. Council worlds implemented increasingly desperate measures. In their new territory, humans monitored the situation with sadness but continued building their future, one that already looked brighter than the past they had left behind. 7 years after humanity's exodus, Centauri Prime's financial district stood eerily quiet. Once the bustling heart of galactic commerce, most of its grand buildings now sat empty. Shops were closed. Trading floors that once roared with activity lay silent. Councillor Trazyn walked through the abandoned exchange hall, his footsteps echoing. As head of the Council's Economic Committee, he had come to assess the situation firsthand. What he found disturbed him deeply. "The decline is worse than reported," he told his aide. "How did it happen so quickly?" "Human traders manage 60% of interspecies commerce," the aide explained. "They were willing to work with everyone, regardless of old rivalries or cultural differences." Trazyn frowned. "Surely our own financial institutions could have filled the gap." "They tried," the aide said, "but the Zithari refused to trade with the Mavorians due to their ancient conflict. The Thalians won't do business with anyone who trades with the cracks. Without humans as intermediaries, the network collapsed." That evening, Trazyn presented his findings to the full Council. The economic data was grim. Trade had declined 70% across Council space. 17 systems faced food shortages. Resource-rich worlds couldn't find buyers for their goods, while manufacturing centers lacked raw materials. "I propose a centralized trading authority," Trazyn said. "The Council will directly control all significant commerce between systems." The motion passed despite objections from smaller species. Within months, the new system proved even worse than the problem it aimed to solve. Corruption flourished. Resources were diverted to politically connected worlds while others suffered. Meanwhile, in human space, the Free Commerce Alliance celebrated its 2nd anniversary. Helen Wright, the economist who designed its framework, addressed representatives from 23 species, including humans, and their new allies. "Our trade volume increased by 45% this year alone," she announced. "By removing barriers and treating all members as equals, we've created unprecedented prosperity." The Kalahari representative glowed with pleasure. "Under Council rules, we were forced to sell our crystals at fixed prices that barely covered production costs. Now we set fair market rates and can afford to expand our operations." After the meeting, Jack Miller spoke with Helen about reports from Council space. "Their economy is collapsing faster than we anticipated," he said. "Some outer systems have abandoned Council currency entirely." Helen nodded. Their economic model always depended on exploitation. The larger species controlled the markets and set the rules. Without humans creating workarounds and alternative trading channels, The inequalities became unsustainable. Should we open trade with Council worlds? Jack asked. Many innocent people are suffering. We already trade with the border systems that reach out to us, Helen replied. The problem isn't our willingness to trade. It's the Council's restrictions on who their members can do business with. On a small agricultural world at the edge of Council space, food riots had broken out. The Council's centralized system had failed to deliver promised supplies. Local Governor Ben Adams, one of the few humans who had chosen to remain in Council territory, made a difficult decision. Contact the human settlements across the border, he told his staff. We need food shipments immediately. The Council has forbidden direct trade with human systems, his assistant reminded him. People are starving, Ben said firmly. I'll deal with the Council's objections later. Within days, human ships arrived with emergency supplies. Word of the unauthorized help spread quickly to other struggling systems. On the Council hub, Vrex confronted the High Speaker with reports from 30 different worlds requesting permission to establish direct trade with human space. We cannot allow it, the High Speaker insisted. It would undermine the Council's authority. People are suffering while we cling to pride, Vrex argued. If we don't adapt, member worlds will leave the Council one by one. Let them threaten, the High Speaker said. Where would they go? Vrex displayed a star chart showing the expanding human territory. They have options now. The humans have created a new economic model that treats all members as partners rather than subjects. Small wonder our people find it attractive. That night, 3 more systems announced they were suspending their Council memberships. The economic foundation that had held the galactic government together for millennia was crumbling faster than anyone had predicted. Anyone except, perhaps, the humans who had seen the flaws all along. 10 years after humanity's departure, alarms blared across the Council hub. Emergency lights flashed as officials ran to the central command chamber. The High Speaker stood before a large display showing dozens of red warning indicators across Council space. The cracks have broken through our borders in 3 sectors, the military commander reported. They've already captured 2 outer worlds and are advancing toward the core systems. The Cracks Collective had always been a threat at the edges of Council territory. For centuries, they had launched occasional raids but never attempted a full invasion. Now they struck with unprecedented coordination and tactics that confused the Council defense forces. Their attack patterns make no sense, the commander said. They're using hit-and-run tactics rather than direct assaults. Our defense grids cannot track their movements. These are human military strategies, an advisor whispered to the High Speaker. Admiral Davidson wrote papers on asymmetric warfare against superior forces. The Cracks are using his playbook. The High Speaker's face darkened. Send the 3rd and 4th fleets to counter their advance. We've already lost contact with the 4th fleet, the commander replied. The 3rd is engaged but reporting heavy losses. In his private chamber, the High Speaker met with senior Council members. For the first time in living memory, real fear showed on their faces. Our military doctrine has not changed in 500 years, Councillor Xallen admitted. We relied on human tactical advisors to adapt to new threats. The Cracks were always studying human history, Vrex added. Their envoys requested access to Earth's military archives multiple times. We thought they were merely curious. They were learning, the High Speaker said grimly. On the border of human space, General Samantha Brooks monitored the Cracks' invasion of Council territory. Her command center displayed real-time intelligence gathered by stealth drones. The Cracks are being careful to avoid approaching our sectors, she told her staff. They know exactly where our boundary markers are. Should we prepare to assist the Council? Her deputy asked. Samantha studied the tactical display. Not unless they ask for help, but put the fleet on alert status. If the Cracks decide to test our defenses, I want to be ready. A scout ship returned from observing Cracks movements near human space. Captain Greg Foster reported directly to Samantha. They sent a small force to probe our defense network, he said. Once they detected our response capabilities, they immediately withdrew. Smart, Samantha nodded. They know we're not the same as the Council forces. We've been implementing new defense technologies while the Council has been standing still. At the Council hub, reports of defeats continued to arrive. The Cracks had captured 5 more systems in just 3 days. Council military leaders argued over how to respond. We must concentrate our forces to protect the core worlds, one general insisted. That abandons 40 billion citizens in the outer systems, another objected. We have no choice, the first replied. Our current strategies aren't working. A junior officer stepped forward nervously. Sir, I found archives of human tactical simulations for this exact scenario. Admiral Davidson ran war games predicting a Cracks invasion 10 years ago. And what did these simulations suggest? The general asked. Distributed defense, sir. Small, mobile units instead of large fleets. Exactly the opposite of our current approach. The generals exchanged looks. None wanted to abandon centuries of military doctrine, but facing annihilation, they had few options. Implement the human tactics, the senior general finally ordered. But applying unfamiliar strategies with officers trained in traditional methods proved disastrous. Within days, 3 more major systems fell to the Cracks' advance. In a closed emergency session, the full council faced the unthinkable. Councillor Vrex formally proposed what many had been whispering privately. We must request human assistance, she said. Our military cannot stop the Cracks alone. Silence fell across the chamber. The High Speaker looked older than ever, the weight of impending defeat visible in his posture. To ask humans for help admits our failure, Councillor Xalan said bitterly. To not ask ensures our destruction, Vrex countered. Which is worse? As the Council debated, the Cracks fleet pressed closer to the heart of Council space. For the first time in thousands of years, the Council faced an enemy it could not defeat, and the only allies who might save them were those they had dismissed as unimportant 10 years before. 12 years after humanity's exodus, a small fleet of Council ships approached the border of human space. Their once gleaming hulls showed signs of battle damage and hasty repairs. Inside the lead vessel, Councillor Vrex prepared for the most important diplomatic mission of her life. We're being scanned, the pilot reported. Human defense systems have detected us. Send the diplomatic codes exactly as Ambassador Anderson provided. Vrex instructed. A tense silence filled the bridge until a response came through. Council delegation, this is Border Command. You are cleared to proceed to New Terra along the highlighted route. Deviate from this path, and you will be considered hostile. Vrex nodded to the pilot. Follow their instructions precisely. As they traveled deeper into human territory, the Council delegation stared in amazement at what they passed. Massive space stations orbited thriving colonies. Ships of designs they had never seen moved with speed and precision. Most surprising were the vessels from species the Council had classified as primitive or unimportant, now flying alongside human craft as equals. Their territory has expanded more than our intelligence suggested, Vrex's aide whispered. They've accomplished in 12 years what would have taken the Council centuries. Vrex replied. On New Terra, Ambassador Kevin Anderson prepared to meet the Council delegation. As Earth's former deputy ambassador, he had often been overlooked by Council officials. Now he represented the United Human Worlds. Are you going to make them grovel? His assistant asked with a smile. Kevin shook his head. That would be satisfying but counterproductive. This is about the future, not the past. The Council ships landed at the diplomatic port. Human security officers escorted Vrex and her team through a capital city that blended human architecture with influences from a dozen alien cultures. Your city is not what I expected, Vrex admitted as they walked. What did you expect? Kevin asked. Chaos. Disorder. Humans were always so unpredictable. Kevin smiled slightly. What you saw as chaos, we call adaptability. What you considered disorder, we call innovation. In the grand meeting hall, Vrex faced Kevin across a simple table. The The contrast with council protocol was striking. No raised platforms for higher-ranking officials, no elaborate ceremony, just direct conversation. The cracks have conquered 28 systems, Vrex began without preamble. Our military cannot stop their advance. She paused, the words difficult after so many centuries of council superiority. We need your help. Kevin studied her for a long moment. The council dismissed humanity as troublemakers. Now you want those same troublemakers to save you. I oppose that view, Vrex said. But yes, that is essentially correct. What are you offering in return? Kevin asked. Vrex placed a data crystal on the table. Full council membership with equal voting rights. Access to all council technologies and resources. Territorial concessions in disputed regions. Kevin didn't touch the crystal. 12 years ago, that would have seemed generous. Now it seems inadequate. What do humans want? Vrex asked directly. We don't want to rejoin a broken system, Kevin said. The council structure is fundamentally flawed. It favors ancient species over newer ones, regardless of what they contribute. It rewards conformity over innovation. Then what solution do you propose? Vrex asked. A new beginning, Kevin replied. Not a council where some species rule over others, but a concordat where all members stand as equals. Vrex looked troubled. Many council species will resist such fundamental change. Then they will face the cracks alone, Kevin said simply. Later that day, Kevin met with the Human Defense Council. General Samantha Brooks presented the military options. We could stop the cracks' advance within weeks, she said. Our technology is generations ahead of theirs now. And the council? Asked a council member. They're desperate, Kevin replied, but not yet desperate enough to truly change. They still think this is a temporary setback, not the end of their dominance. So what do we do? Asked Samantha. Kevin looked out the window at the gleaming city below, where humans worked alongside species the council had dismissed for millennia. We offer limited humanitarian aid to affected systems, he decided. Enough to protect civilian populations, but we make clear that any long-term solution requires dismantling the old power structure. And if they refuse? Samantha asked. Then they'll learn the final lesson about what they lost when humans left, Kevin said quietly. Not just our innovation or adaptability, but our compassion, our willingness to help even those who don't deserve it. 15 years after humanity's departure, the old council chamber stood empty. The grand hall that had hosted galactic governance for thousands of years was now a museum, a reminder of a system that had finally collapsed under its own weight. In its place, representatives gathered in the new Concordat Assembly on neutral territory. The circular chamber had no raised platforms, no special seats for elder species. All members sat as equals in a space designed for collaboration rather than hierarchy. Eric Johnson, elected as the first human high representative, addressed the gathered delegates. Today marks the 5th anniversary of the Galactic Concordat, he said. What began in crisis has evolved into the most prosperous era our shared civilization has known. The journey to this moment had not been easy. When the Cracks invasion threatened to overwhelm the Council, humanity had provided enough military support to protect civilian populations while making it clear that any long-term solution required fundamental change. As more systems abandoned the failing Council to join the human-led alliance, the balance of power shifted. Within 3 years, the once mighty Council had dissolved, replaced by the more equitable Concordat. Our combined scientific teams have developed technologies that benefit all our peoples, Eric continued. Our shared defense fleet protects all our worlds equally. Our economic alliance has raised living standards across known space. Among the delegates sat former Councillor Vrex, now serving as a regular representative of her people. Beside her was a Cracks envoy, once the greatest threat to galactic peace, now integrated into the wider community through the diplomatic efforts of Michelle Garcia. After the assembly, Vrex spoke with Eric in the garden outside. I remember when humans first petitioned to join the Council, she said, Many thought you were too unpredictable, too dangerous to be trusted. And now, Eric asked. Now we understand that those same qualities saved us all. Vrex replied. Your adaptability, your creativity, your willingness to question established ways. In orbit above, ships from dozens of species worked together on the largest project in galactic history, a combined research and exploration vessel designed to venture beyond known space. Human engineers worked alongside Cytheri scientists, Krax navigators, and Kalhari energy specialists. Project Director Alan Foster reviewed the final preparations with his diverse team. The Voyager represents everything the Concordat stands for, he told them. Not one species imposing its vision, but all of us contributing our unique strengths. Back in the assembly hall, Eric met with the former High Speaker of the Council, now serving as a cultural advisor. The once proud Cytheri had aged considerably during the difficult transition years. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if the Council had treated humans as equals from the beginning? Eric asked him. The old alien considered this. We would still be the Council, I suppose. Stronger, perhaps, but fundamentally unchanged. And is that better or worse than what we have now? Eric asked. Different, the former High Speaker admitted. Change is difficult for species as old as mine. We saw stability as the highest virtue, even when that stability was preventing progress. The irony, Eric said, is that by forcing us to leave, you created the very circumstances that eventually saved galactic civilization. That evening, at a celebration marking the Concordat anniversary, species that once barely tolerated each other mingled freely. Cultural barriers that had seemed insurmountable under the Council were now seen as opportunities for growth and learning. Jack Miller, now in his 70s, watched from a quiet corner. Susan Carter joined him, offering a glass of the same rare whiskey they had shared when leaving Council space 15 years earlier. Did you ever imagine it would turn out this way? She asked. Jack smiled. Not exactly. I thought we'd build something good for humanity. I never expected we'd end up rebuilding galactic society. So what did the Council realize too late? Susan asked. When humans left. Jack looked out at the diverse gathering. Former enemies now allies, ancient species learning from younger ones, a civilization finally moving forward together rather than holding itself back. That we weren't just troublemakers, he said. We were the spark. The catalyst that could either be suppressed or embraced, but never ignored. They realized, too late, that in trying to control us, they were extinguishing the very fire that could have helped them grow. He raised his glass. To new beginnings. And to lessons learned, Susan added, even when they come the hard way.